Hey everybody, my name is Patty Minch and I'm a 6th grade science teacher at Reynolds Middle School in the school district of Lancaster. At Reynolds in my science class we go over a lot of earth and space science. One thing I'm really looking forward to this year is we get to take our students to the Chesapeake Bay for a week where they'll stay overnight for 5 days and get some hands-on science experience. A little bit about me and my home life. This is my family right here. My wife Casey and I had a son in April. And you can see our little buddy here. Also, I love to spend time outdoors and be with my family. Taking a look at these 7 strategies of assessment and learning, specifically with the alignment to practice and my own teaching philosophy. The first one, providing clear and understandable visions of the learning target. This is kind of the quintessential teaching must-do to post learning goals. One thing that I noticed in our text was being sure to align our learning goals to our rubric so students can see the connection between what they're being scored on and the learning goals that they were presented with. It's also important to revisit this throughout the lesson so students can kind of see the connections between what we're working on throughout the class and the learning goals that we have posted for the day. The second one, using examples of models of strong and weak work. I find this especially useful with project-based learning. Oftentimes my students are creating presentations or videos or some other sort of project, and it's often helpful for them to see examples and non-examples. It's helpful for me to explain why different aspects of the examples are positive or negative. It's also good for students to give feedback on the examples so that they are able to determine why an example may have gotten a lower score or a higher score, or what they particularly appreciate about the examples that I provided for them. One thing to look out for when doing this is to be sure not to stifle students' creativity. Make sure that students know that the examples that you're providing are not the only way to do the project, but give them lots of options to present their understanding in a lot of different ways. Next, offering regular descriptive feedback during the learning. This is a really big one, both in our text and one that I live by in my own classroom. I often provide written feedback through our LMS, which is Schoology. It could for you be D2L or Moodle or something like that. Or I use the Google Drive where students can leave and receive comments from me and get feedback. In our text, they also mentioned having students give peer feedback. I think within doing that in my own classroom, it's helpful to add structure. So maybe students are giving 2 positives and 1 criticism or 1 thing to work on, and that kind of provides a little bit of structure for students so that they're looking at the positives as well as giving some good criticism. Next, teaching students to self-assess and set goals. One of the biggest things that I learned from this text in this chapter is to make sure that students know where they are and where they're going in order to be able to help them be more accurate self-assessors. So revisiting their goals, also revisiting the learning target helps them know where they're going so they know how close they are to reaching their goal. Also, if the units or the lessons are set up as building blocks, it helps students to kind of see what's coming down the pike, and allows for a little bit more transparency throughout the unit. Next, using evidence of student learning needs to determine next steps in teaching. This is really big. This is kind of the gist of formative assessment. In my own classroom, I use Kahoot or discussions or quizzes to try to get the information so that I can analyze it as quickly as possible and then inform my instruction. If I'm not able to do it within that 1 class period, I ensure that my station rotations or my groups that are set up for the next day are based on the information that I gathered from the previous lesson. Next, design-focused instruction followed by practice with feedback. Again, going back to project-based learning, this is also mentioned in our text. But within projects, having a time where students can go back, look at the feedback that you provided for them in a timely manner, and then work on the criticisms or critiques that you gave them to try to improve on their work. Lastly, providing opportunities for students to track, reflect on, and share their learning progress. Our text talks a little bit about celebrating progress, giving students the opportunity to share their progress with the teacher or with one another or with their parents. The text mentions that this gives them a little bit more ownership in their learning and encourages them to keep on going. Also, providing students with reflection questions either at the end of the lesson or before you start the next lesson to kind of review what they had worked on previously is a great way to get students to be thinking about their learning progress, especially as it pertains to any goals that they may have set. So there you have a brief overview of the 7 strategies of assessment for learning.